Now, I've always been a Surface Pro fan. I've been using their devices for years. But the one thing that's always been really lacking is the actual integrated graphics on these devices. What would you give to play a AAA game on your 2-in-1 device? Or maybe a bit of video editing? Or even render a heavy 3D project? Well, that's where tonight's 2-in-1 comes in, the Asus ROG Flow Z13 2-in-1 powerhouse. The only tablet with an i9 processor and an NVIDIA 3050 Ti graphics card. We're going to put this cracking 2-in-1 device through its paces. We're going to test it in its day-to-day use as well as the benchmarks to see if this device can kick your Surface Pro onto eBay. But first, a message from our sponsor. And what better sponsor for tonight's video than Inateck, with their amazing range of cases, sleeves and peripherals for your laptops or tablets, like this Surface Pro 8 or X type cover, which despite being half the price of Microsoft type cover accessory, feels absolutely amazing to type on, and the touchpad feels great. It comes with 7 colours of RGB backlighting for the keyboards, as well as 3 levels of brightness. It features Bluetooth Swift Pair for incredibly fast pairing to the actual device itself. It also has auto screen on and off when you open and close the type cover, just like the Microsoft original type cover. Now, not many third-party keyboards can do that. Now, the cover is hard-wearing, stain-resistant and long-lasting, and this material should hold up much better than Alcantara's type cover material. And being Bluetooth, you can actually use this keyboard when it's not connected to the device, unlike the Microsoft type cover. And one single charge via the USB-C port will give you up to 90 days of standby time. Now, this Surface type cover keyboard is available to pre-order direct from Inateck with an early October release, and will also be available from Amazon and other large retailers soon. Check the links in the descriptions below. Now let's get back to the video. So this Z13 was released a little while ago, but with a hefty price tag of about $1,900 just for this unit. And I think that killed its chance of being made a mainstream option for most people. It's much more expensive than a Surface Pro, and for the same sort of money, you can get a very powerful, dedicated gaming laptop that'll be much more powerful than this device. But recently, Asus have actually reduced the price to $1,399 for this unit here, which brings it much more in line with a Surface Pro 9 with type cover that's just been released this year. But for that price, you're getting an i9 12900K, an NVIDIA 3050 Ti, 16GB of DDR5 RAM, a 1TB removable M.2 SSD storage, a 1920 by 1200p 120Hz touchscreen display, and the RGB type cover, all included in this package. So on the face of it, it is much better value. Now, another nifty feature of this tablet, you can buy a more expensive version with the XG Mobile Interface external graphics card that plugs directly into the PCIe and gives you even better 3D performance. But to get that 3080 module with this device, it does come in at over $2,000. So personally, it's a bit too much for me at the moment. I've just gone for the tablet. Right, so let's have a quick look at this tablet itself then. And with this much power, there are going to be some trade-offs, with the first one being the actual thickness of this device. It comes in at about 12mm thick, which is about as thick as the entire Surface Pro and type cover package compared to just the tablet on this device. So it is quite chunky for an actual tablet device you're going to be holding. It's also reasonably heavy at 2.6 pounds, so much more heavy than the Surface Pro. But obviously if you're going to be packing this much power into a tablet, there do need to be some trade-offs. It's also got quite an aggressive design going on, with this very angular curves around the actual device, the Republic of Gamers logo, the space age fan vents and design on the tablet, as well as, in my opinion, a beautiful looking cutout to the motherboard covered with RGB lighting. Now personally, I do love the actual look of this device, but it may not fit in well into an office environment. Now the good news is we get a kickstand with this device, which is every bit as good as the kickstand on a Surface Pro, and we get a handy little tab on the side which allows us to easily pull it away from the device rather than trying to get your nail in like you do on the Surface Pro. And we've got a pretty good selection of ports for this device too. It's got a Thunderbolt 4 port, a USB 3.2 Gen 2 port, a USB 2 port, the ROG XG Mobile interface for that external graphics card, a 3.5mm combo audio jack, and a microSD card slot. So a pretty good all-round selection for this type of device. And on the right side, we've also got the power button with a built-in fingerprint reader, which although does work very well, I did often find I was mishitting it because you can't easily see the power button on the side of the device. And we've also got a volume rocker just below that for adjusting your volume on the go. And at the bottom of the device, we've got the speaker grills on the left and the right hand side. The included type cover is excellent. It is a little bit thicker than a Surface Pro type cover, but with that, you're getting much better key travel and pressure, making it an excellent typing experience. We've also got the RGB keyboard, which it isn't per key, it's a one-zone lighting, but it does mean that you can have either the colours cycling through the keys or a static colour on the keyboard, giving it some great customizability for this actual type cover itself. The included touchpad, although small, is excellent, with great tracking, solid clicks and gestures that work as expected. Moving up to the 13.4-inch 1920 by 1200 screen with 500 nits of brightness and 120 Hz is a really good compromise for this type of device. Now, it isn't the most pixel-dense screen, but in my opinion, the 1920 by 1200 looks great on a 13-inch display. And not only is it a touchscreen, but the Surface Pens also work with these devices. And using my Surface Pen from my old Surface Pro 7 Plus was an excellent experience drawing on this device. Now, above the screen, we've got a 720p webcam, which looks and sounds like this. And this is a test of the webcam and the microphones on the Asus ROG Flow Z13. Now, being a tablet, we also have an 8 megapixel camera on the rear of the device. And although it is in an odd position, it's still handy for taking some eBay snaps of your Surface Pro so you can put that up for sale when you finish playing with this device. Now, the SSD is a 30mm M.2 SSD, so not the best, but there are compromises when you are using a small device like this, but it is reasonably easy to change. Now, the 1TB device that they provide isn't the fastest, but that is a problem with these 30mm M.2s, but it'll still feel snappy in day-to-day use on this device. Now, whilst we're talking about snappy, let's look at the performance. And before we start looking at the benchmarks and the graphs, we've got to get our expectations into check. Now, yes, Asus have put an i9 12900H in here, but in order to cram it into this slim and light 13-inch tablet, they have had to actually cap the actual wattage on this CPU. So the multi-core scores is going to perform worse than other 12th gen gaming laptops. But despite that, it's still miles ahead of every other 13-inch or even 14-inch 2-in-1 or laptop. But in shorter tests where it is actually allowed to boost, such as Geekbench 5, the multi-core and the single-core scores are very impressive. Now, we have 3 distinct power profiles within the Armoury Crate software, as well as a manual profile. The turbo and the performance profiles give incredible performance out of this little machine, whereas the silent mode heavily throttles back the CPU, but gives this tablet very pleasant fan noise and low temperatures. And moving on to the GPU, this Z13 has an NVIDIA 3050 Ti with a 40-watt TGP. Now, that doesn't sound like a lot, but it is certainly a million times better than any of the integrated graphics that you get on all the other Surface Pros or Ultrabook devices. And this leads to some great benchmarks and in-game gameplay. Most of the lighter titles are playable at its native 1200p resolution at high settings, and you can even play some AAA titles on this machine if you're prepared to tweak around with some of the settings. Now, as with the CPU, the GPU performance is affected by the profiles. Again, there's not much difference between the performance mode and the turbo mode, but the silent mode makes this machine only really usable for very, very light 3D work. Now, the amazing news is Asus have done a really impressive job at keeping the actual fan noise and the thermals in check on this machine. We've got some nice intakes on the back and a large vent across the top, as well as a vapor chamber with liquid metal, which does an impressive job for this size form factor in dealing with all the waste heat that these hot components use. Now, the one niggle that I have had is you have to use the included 100-watt USB-C charger. If you use a third-party charger, dock or monitor with power delivery, you will not get the full turbo boost power. Instead, it throttles back to pretty much the performance mode of about 65 watts. Now, this is still more than usable, but you're not getting the full performance of the machine without the dedicated adapter, and that is a bit of a shame. But the good news is, because we've got those 2 USB-C ports, you can still plug the power adapter in whilst putting it through your dock, your monitor, or whatever else you want to use with this device to get its full performance. And even with its slightly throttled performance, it's still really impressive and night and day above any Surface Pro device that's out there. Now, before we talk about battery life on this device, I do want to talk about performance on battery. Now, as usual with most of the 12th generation CPUs, CPU performance is incredible on battery, especially if you put it into the sort of high performance mode. You can put it in the silent mode and it throttles back even further for better battery life. But if you know you need the power, you put it into performance. But when it comes to the actual GPU, because they are using a 40-watt TGP GPU, you're pretty much getting the majority of that power even on battery. So if you unplug the device mid-game on a device like this, you're not going to lose, say, the 75% of frames like you'd get on a gaming laptop. This performs pretty much like it would do on the standard performance profile. But obviously that's going to tank your battery life. When I tested this gaming on the battery, I only managed 1 hour and 25 minutes, which isn't bad for gaming on the actual device at full speed, but you know, who wants to just game for an hour and a half? And when we run our usual battery testing on this device, We switched the screen to 60 Hz and 200 nits of brightness. We turned off the RGB and we put it into power saver settings. We used our usual YouTube streaming over Wi-Fi and we managed to get 6 hours and 10 minutes, which isn't bad, don't get me wrong, but this is an area where the Surface Pro will handily beat a tablet like this. Okay, so that takes me through to the conclusion. I have to be honest, being a big Surface Pro user, I love the 2-in-1 form factor and the fact that Asus have actually made such an amazing job recreating a high-powered Surface Pro with this is impressive in itself. Now, we recently looked at the Dell XPS 2-in-1. They didn't have the kickstand. They had a sort of a janky sort of like iPad stand, and that really disappointed us. To see a proper kickstand which works just like a Surface Pro is very impressive. Now, add to that the fact that we've got incredible performance on the CPU and a dedicated GPU, meaning that this is a 2-in-1 device that you can game on, you can video edit, you can run Blender or other heavy 3D work, and this can perform amazingly. I love my Surface Pro and I use it daily, but I know its limitations. I only use it for taking notes and researching and chucking in my bag. I wouldn't consider gaming on it, and I wouldn't consider video editing on it. That's always done at my desk on a proper computer. But the fact with this, you can have one device that does it all. Now, yes, it's heavier and thicker than a Surface Pro, and the battery life isn't as impressive. But if those little flaws don't hold you back, then this is an incredible machine for the money, and it's actually the same price as the Surface Pro 9 with performance that's more than double. So that's my thoughts on this 2-in-1. As always, love to know what you guys think. Would you consider one of these instead of a Surface Pro 8 or Surface Pro 9? Pop your messages down below and I will get back to you. And as always, thanks for watching.